So far, we have already talked about two main pillars of malware in the period in 2005-2010. First is server-side polymorphism. That pretty much increased number of malware variants exponentially. You can watch the prior episode about it. That was our first pillar. The second one we just finished, and that was the rootkits. In the period between 2005 to 2010, I have to say it mostly were 32-bit rootkits. Because Windows XP 32-bit was predominant operating system, and that made the rootkits, 30-bit rootkits, extremely powerful, extremely popular on that platform. And today we're going to start discussion on the last pillar, which are exploits. Even though the period between 2005 to 2010 has not been yet a golden age of exploitation, it was a beginning of it. For example, I believe the first exploit MPack was actually available around 2008, and that's when the whole movement of drive-by download started. Nowadays, when we talk about drive-by download, most of the time people think about, okay, that's something malicious has been manually downloaded by user, and then user would click on that and would get himself or herself infected. And that's mostly how drive-by download works nowadays. However, between 2005 to 2010, and also between 2010 to 2015, which were the golden age of those type of exploits and exploit packs, that was very different. And today we will talk about how different it was. So the way exploit kits work is that and drive-by download worked overall, is when the user would browse the web, specifically would browse the internet, for example, searching for something or going through some forums or whatever, eventually user would hit a malicious website. There were many different methods how to redirect user into malicious website, but pretty much they're kind of similar nowadays as they were before. It's either malicious link or malicious redirect or spam campaign with a malicious URL, whatever, right? The user would get to malicious website. But if nowadays this malicious site would try to phish user or offer something to download and execute in a machine, at that period of time instead, it would redirect a user into a different resource with an exploit kit. And exploit kit is a selection of multiple different exploits, and that's why it's called exploit kit. For example, it might have exploit against Internet Explorer A or PDF reader or Adobe Flash and so on, right? So exploit kit would have multiple exploits available and prepared. And what it would do when it redirects the user into the exploit kit would run a JavaScript code to detect what type of applications are available on the user side. For example, what type of browser it is, what type of PDF add-on or PDF reader installed, is Adobe Flash available, and what version it is. And when JavaScript would execute, it would actually send the exploits which are most suitable for the user machine to the user. And what those exploits do, they would eventually drop and execute evil.exe. I mean, of course, it would not call it evil.exe, it would be whatever other name, but idea would be that user would not need to do anything. At that point of time, if you're just browsing the internet and you have vulnerable plugin, a vulnerable browser installed on your machine, and you just open the malicious website, it redirects you to exploit kits, boom, your computer is infected. Nothing required from user. It's pretty much a zero-click infection, and that would call a drive-by download. So that would be the way malware would infect the users at that period of time. Again, I'm going a little bit ahead of myself. Period between 2005 to 2010 is just the beginning of exploit kits. There, of course, were exploits before, but the difference between exploit and exploit kit is a commercially available package. It means one malware actors group purchased that exploit kit from another one, for example, as a service or as a subscription, and would be getting the updates every day or when every new vulnerability would be found, they would get updated exploit kit, and what that exploit kit would guarantee is exploitation of users. So pretty much you start to see as an organized crime would work at that period of time, it started to build very strong hierarchy. So here the actor who wants to organize a malicious campaign and infect users, for example, to send a spam. Of course, that one person might not even possess all the technical knowledge, or might not even possess any technical knowledge at all to actually build such a campaign. Instead, what this person would do is first, they would buy or build malware. For example, it could be a spam bot. They might even pay extra to another developer to build a rootkit to cover that spam bot. The spam bot can already have a rootkit embedded as a together package, or it can be a separate rootkit build. Then another service would be Crypter, server-side polymorphic Crypter, which would constantly re-encrypt and regenerate polymorphically that malware, so it will be applied on malware all the time on every new regeneration. That would be purchased separately. The next step, the actor can purchase the exploit kit and set up its own redirects to infect different users, or it can also use services called paid per install, where other people who develop different malware would first infect the users, and then they would accept the payment for installation of the new malware. So there was the whole ecosystem, and it wouldn't be just one person, and not even one team. It could be team 1, team 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, right? So that's why it's called organized crime. There wasn't just one lone wolf who would sit at night and develop exploit kit, Crypter, malware, rootkit, and start the whole campaign of distribution of the malware. Instead, it would be very tightly organized crime, different groups of people responsible for different parts of this cybercrime operation, and that type of crime would proliferate between 2005 to 2010, and kind of would lay out the whole beginning of the cybercrime, how we know it nowadays.